In this video, we're going to take a look at solving quadratic equations by factoring. Now, I want to talk for a second about the sort of the general principle here. We did this in class where we said if I take 0 and I multiply it times 8, I get 0. Similarly, if I take 8 and I multiply it by 0, I get 0. And really, the takeaway from these two is that if either factor in a multiplication problem, the first one or the second one, if either one is 0, the answer is 0, right? So in the first one, the first number is 0, and doesn't matter what the second one is, my product's going to be 0. And the second one, doesn't matter what the first one is, the second one, if it's 0, I'm going to get a 0 answer. So we're going to need to remember that. So what we're going to try to do is factor these. We'll do a couple of the problems here. Let's do number 2. All right. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to find two numbers, because I'll end up with two factors like this. I want to end up with two numbers that if I multiply them together, I get 28, right? And if I add or subtract them, it says subtract in my inevitable writing. And if I add or subtract them, I end up with a -3. So first thing I'll do, I'll try to find the factor. What are the factors of 28? Well, we'll do them over here. We'll say, 1 and 28, right? Let's see, what else? 2 and 14. 4 and 7. 5 won't go, 6 won't go, 7 would. We already did that. So these are the three factors of 28. Now I'm looking for two of them that if I add or subtract them, I get a -3. Well, let's see, 1 and 28, those numbers are so far apart, there's no way I'm going to get a -3 out of adding or subtracting those. So that can't be the one I want. 2 and 14, again, the same problem, right? I have a 2. They're too far apart. If I add the 2, 14 and 2 is 16. If I subtract 14 minus 2 is 12. There's no way. But the 4 and the 7, that looks interesting to me, right? 7 minus 4 is 3. So this is a real possibility. So I look at the 28, and it's a negative, right? Which means one of these numbers is going to have to be negative, and one's going to have to be positive. So it's either going to be a -4 and 7, or 7 and -4. Well, remember I got a hint here that if I add or subtract these, I'm going to get a 3, a -3, right? So that means the bigger of these two numbers has to be a negative number. Think about that. If I'm adding two numbers, right, or subtracting, then the larger of the two numbers is going to carry this sign. So for example, I need a -3s, so that means the negative has to go with the 7, and the positive has to go with the 4. So I'm looking for 4 and 7. So 4 times -7 gives me my -28, which is what I want. And then if I add a 4 and a -7, right, so I go 4 in the right, and on a number line I go 4 to the right, and then I go 7 to the left. That means I've gone 4 plus 3 more, so I'm at -3. So those two do add up to -3, and that tells me that the two factors here are going to be s, positive 4, and s, and a -7, right? And now I want to solve this, right? So this is right back to what we talked about up here, right? Where I want to set these two are going to be equal to 0, which means either the first one has to be 0 or the second term has to be 0. In other words, s plus 4 has to be 0, or s minus 7 is 0. Well, if s plus 4 is 0, if that's the one that's 0, if I solve this for s, right, we subtract 4 from both sides, so I end up as s equals -4. On the right side, if s plus 7 is 0, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to add 7 because I want to get rid of that. I'm solving it for 7. I'll add 7 to both sides, and I get s equals a +7. So that tells me, and we usually write the answer in braces like this, or brackets, whatever you want to call them. So the answer to this is -4 and 7. All right, let's try number 6 up here at the top. N squared minus 11n plus 24. It's the same drill. I want to end up with two factors that are set equal to 0. So I'm going to try to factor the n squared minus 11n plus 24. Again, I start with the factors of 24. Well, there's 1 and 24, 2 and 12, see, 3 and 8. 3 times 8 is 24. 4 and 6 is 24. 5 won't go. 6, we already did 6, so that's all the factors. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now again, they have to, the middle, so when I multiply them together, I have to get 24. And when I add or subtract, and I'll write it this way, add or subtract, I have to get a negative 11. Now let's see what we got here before we jump into this. So the negative 11, all right, well, I'll tell you what, let's go through the factors. So 1 and 24, again, they're too far apart to be negative 11 when I add them, so that can't be it. 2 and 12, that's close. If I subtracted them, 12 minus 2, they give me 10. 12 plus 2 is 14. They're close, but I don't think they're going to get it. 3 and 8, well, geez, if 3 and 8, they add up to 11. So if I could get the signs right, I think I'm going to be home free. And just to finish it, 4 and 6, 4 and 6 is 10. 6 minus 4 is 2. That's not going to work. So it has to be 3 and 8. And again, if I'm looking at the 24, that has to be it's a positive 24. But then 11 is negative, right? So I'm going to, if I add these two together, 8 and 11, and I get a negative number, that means they both had to be negative, right? To add these two numbers and have them be negative 11, they both have to be negative. And if I multiply them, negative 3 times negative 8, negative times negative is a positive, right? So those are the guys I'm looking for. I'm looking for n minus 3 and n minus 8. And again, back thinking about this up at the top, we talked about one of these two has to be 0. So either the n minus 3 is 0 or n minus 8 equals 0. Well, if n minus 3, to solve this for n, right, I'll do the opposite. I'll add 3 to this side, and to keep them equivalent, I'll add 3 to the other side. So I get n equals 3. When I do the n minus 8, right, I'm going to do the opposite, add it to both sides. So this gives me n equals 8. So the solutions, the two values for n that will make this statement true are positive 3 and positive 8. Yeah, done. All right, last one. We'll do this quickly here. So again, finding the factors of 36. It's going to be what? 1 and 36, 2 and 18, okay? 3 and 12, 4 goes into 36 9 times. Now look here, 4 and 9, if I'm keeping an eye on my 13 here, these are worth trying before we go through any more factors. So let's try these guys. I know 1 and 36 are too far apart. 18 minus 2, those are too far apart. 12 and 3 are 15, they're close. 9 and 4. So this is just like number 6, where when I multiply them, I have to get a positive number, and when I add them, I have to get a negative number. So remember in number 6, we said if they were both negative, then when I multiply them, I'll get the positive that I want. And if I add them, a negative and a negative gives me a negative, and that'll give me the negative here that I want. So what I'm looking for here is W minus 4 and W minus 9, because these two, remember, they had to both be negative. So here we go, solving these individually. W minus 4 equals 0, or W minus 9 equals 0. In this case, we'll do the opposite. We'll add 4, and we'll end up with W equals 4. It's a rotten 4. W minus 9 equals 0. W equals 9. So the solution to this, the values of W that will make this equation true, are 4 and 9. And we're done.